I'm Steve in IT, and I'm a network engineer specialized in network security, automation, and monitoring. And this is the first instructional video in my network forensics series. This time, we're discussing physical networking and forensics in Layer 1 before the first packet. Throughout this series, we're going to talk about the technologies, tools, threats, and eventually the workflows involved in network forensics. And where could be better to start than at the very beginning of a network, the moment two interfaces are connected together. Before we get there, we need to briefly talk about the OSI model. Simply, it's a 7-layer model used to describe network data and its transmission, especially where protocols fit in that transmission relative to each other. The OSI model is well known in network engineering, where you'd hear the model's layers used in regular speech. It starts at layer 1, the physical layer, which we're talking about in this video, which applies to physical networking, and steps up all the way to layer 7, the application layer, which describes how application data interacts with networking for its transmission. You may hear me use layer numbers and layer names interchangeably throughout this series, but I will generally try to stick to the layer number. I'll let you look through the chart instead of reading this off to you. But of note, you'll see some protocols do sit kind of on multiple layers. They may live and act on different layers, and are the subject to many pedantic network engineering arguments. So let's start with layer 1, where it begins, the physical handshake. First and foremost, this talk will be very shallow. Yes, I could go into link negotiation and CSMA-CD, or the many related protocols in detail, but this isn't a network certification series. This will be just enough detail to understand for network forensics purposes. I also won't be talking about wireless in this video at all, as physical wireless forensics are a whole other complex beast entirely. This time we're just talking about cable networking, and if you don't like that, you can let me know down in the comments. I'm going to tell you about carrier sense, and I'm going to use that term very broadly. In modern networks, copper interfaces, meaning RJ45 Ethernet, deduce a connection when a circuit is completed across an Ethernet cable by connecting interfaces to both sides. They then transmit normal link pulses, or NLPs, rhythmically kind of tapping on the connectors with voltage. Fiber does something similar, except the interface transmits a constant light signal. Both copper and fiber interfaces do so pretty much all the time unless the interface is disabled, while also listening for similar link heartbeats from the other side of the link. Maintaining these signals tells both sides of the link that there are interfaces connected. These signals can also be used by an attacker to tell if a wall port is connected to a switch or if a fiber is lit by a ready transceiver. Technically, this would also be where the lowest possible level of attack exists. An attacker, or even an unwitting person like an employee or construction worker, can unplug a cable or even sever an important connection with a simple pair of scissors. Technically, that would be a layer 1 denial of service attack. After carrier sense, we have link negotiation, during which the interfaces communicate their capabilities to each other and agree on the best common configuration. There are multiple protocols that can be used, especially with the different fiber optic transceivers. But in short, know that copper uses fast link pulses for twisted pair Ethernet, and fiber transceivers use a suite of protocols, kind of collectively known as DDM and DOM, but I'm not going to get into those today, there's just way too many. Then what tools detect layer 1 attacks, and how do you stop them? Well, more than anything, it's eyeballs and feet. If you can see a port and walk to that port, so can an attacker with similar access. So let's also throw in security cameras for good measure. I'm going to say should a lot, but I've never seen an organization do all of these all of the time perfectly. In data rooms, any appliance ports not in use should be disabled and have the cables removed. This should be audited and corrected at some regular interval. Data rooms should also be secured with their access controlled to only authorized personnel, period. If you can install security cameras and effective electronic door controls, you should also do so. Basically, anytime someone walks into a data room, it should be logged and further alerted if the person is not authorized. Further, investigating for physical tampering would be part of this process. signs of forced entry on a door, evidence of misconfigured or damaged cabling or interfaces, or even tools left behind by an attacker, stuff like that. In common areas like workspaces, any wall ports that are not in use should be disconnected from the network, which I kind of said earlier. Further, no ports should be accessible in any way outside of controlled spaces. These days, we have the technology to even take like reception areas in a lobby fully wireless, and if possible, you should do so. Also, implementing a report unknown workers policy is helpful. If someone unknown is doing anything that looks like IT work, anyone in the organization should have a way to quickly verify that that worker is authorized. Even if they don't look like they're doing IT work, if it's someone you don't recognize and they're in a place where it's not likely they belong, someone should know about that. Beyond those, there are specialized tools for inspecting network interfaces, cabling, and fiber, but they are expensive and they aren't most commonly used in network forensics. If you ever have a need for that level of forensic detail, you'd benefit from bringing in a physical networking specialist who is already adept with those tools. Let's talk about the risk of layer 1 attacks on the risk matrix. While the likelihood of an attacker getting past your controls unnoticed is relatively low, that also assumes you're following best practices. Still, the physical vector isn't the most commonly used pathway for attackers, so I'm giving it a likelihood of about 2. In reality, attackers coming through an insecure wall port or a disgruntled employee cutting all the cables has happened and even made the news, and many memes, but it's not terribly common. That said, a successful layer 1 attack will be leveraged to move into the network for greater access, or in the scissors case, could bring your network right down. With that in mind, I give severity a 5, which means putting a priority on implementing the appropriate controls and during investigations, responding quickly so you can preserve evidence before mess is cleaned up, witnesses forgot what happened, and the security camera footage ages out. Well, if the controls are physical, then how is this network forensics? Well, because the network starts at access. Whether you're writing procedure for a hypothetical network attack or investigating an attack as it happens, these sources of intelligence are paramount. Users near the attack can provide valuable human intelligence, and door access logs and security camera footage are typically going to be part of the layer 1 attack investigation. And remember, if the ports and cables can't be accessed, they can't be attacked. So understanding the lowest level of connection to the network and its forensic implications at layer 1 is essential for network security. By understanding how attackers can gather intelligence and exploit vulnerabilities at this level, organizations can implement the right technical and physical security controls, and it enables you to properly investigate layer 1 attacks. Don't forget that network forensics involves both digital and physical aspects, and a holistic approach is crucial for a strong security posture.